Hi everyone, and welcome to the Game Breakdown Podcast, the podcast where we break down lots of different games. So today we're going to be talking about one of our favourites, and especially one of your favourites, right?
Yeah, huge fan. Cheeky ringtone. It's fine.
Sorry.
He always leaves it on every time. He always does. Okay.
Right, it's on silent now. I'm sorry that I'm popular. I can't help it.
I know, at least someone is.
Um, yeah, there you go. So yes, today we're going to be talking about The Last of Us, one of our favourites, but you really like this game.
Love it. I absolutely adore the game. I think for me it's a serious game. There you go. Like I
With a
love it.
laugh, yeah.
Yeah, with a laugh, I know. But it just it blew my mind when I played it, and I didn't play it when it first came out, so I I mean I only fully completed it like not too long before the second game come out. But like I literally fell in love with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually no, I was gonna say you. I bet you think you're gonna say I'm shocked by that, but no, I'm not because I was the same. So my brother had the game before me, and he really enjoyed it and sung its praises. And I don't often trust his opinion, so I was like, oh okay, cool. Then he let me borrow it, and I played the first part of it. And the opening to that game is probably one of the best openings. Okay, let's not say the best, but one of the most like tugs on your heartstrings kind
Impactful.
of, yeah, impactful. There you go, great word. One of the most impactful game openings that I've seen in a long time, and it really drew me in. And after I played the beginning of it, seeing, well, let's just talk about it, seeing Joel try and escape the city with his daughter and his brother, is it he's
Yeah.
with? Yeah.
Tommy. Yeah.
And then seeing his daughter get shot and the whole death scene, everything, that really pulled me in.
Yeah.
Um, and then I
Same.
gave up.
And then you gave up.
And I didn't touch it for 3 years late
No,
for
that's
3 more years.
honestly it. Like I did the same thing. I don't like to play games when there's a huge hype around them unless I know the series
Mhm.
well. I won't just jump into it just because someone else is like, "Oh, this is a good game," like I have
Yeah.
to want it. So, so I basically started it a long time ago on the PS3. And
Yes,
then
that's what I played it on. Yep.
and then I stopped playing it. I don't know why. And then obviously when the next one was announced, I just remember thinking, I remember how good the beginning of that game was and how hooked I was. Why on earth didn't I finish it? There's another one coming out, like I have to play it. And then I
Mhm.
started playing it and I was like, why did I never finish this? But I'm glad that I didn't leave too much of a break between the two games purely because of how like impactful that game is. Like you can't just
Yeah.
walk away with it without wanting to know like what happens next. So yeah, obviously we are going to spoil everything in this episode,
Yeah.
and yeah,
In case you didn't realize, I
brilliant.
already spoiled the death scene. Sorry,
You
everybody, if
did,
you
you
weren't
did.
aware before the spoiler thing.
But the thing is though, like going back to that, no matter how
Mhm.
many times I play that game, I cry every single time, or at least well up. Like I know it's coming, but like it still fucking
It still
hits
fucks
me
with you.
big time.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was watching all the videos on YouTube of like how it was made and how they filmed that scene, and like
Oh.
for that final take, they must have done it like a million times. They
They
went away.
actually shot her.
Yeah, they actually shot her. Yeah,
Going for realness.
the realness. But yeah, that was like that take was must have been like take 50 or something. So they'd done
Mhm.
loads of scenes between that, and then they went back and they were like emotionally exhausted. And I think that's how they got the take because it was just like, you know, they were just destroyed from it.
They were just dumb.
Might as well have just been shot, but yeah.
I agree, though. It's a really dramatic moment. And I was the same because I played that opening bit with my brother. He actually sat next to me and was like, play the first 20 minutes with Will. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. I'll give it a go. So I played the first 20 minutes. And after that happened, I kind of sat next to him and I was like, oh my God. And like, I'm not going to sit and cry in front of my brother. But I was like, that was a bit like, oh my God, that's like hurt me. And he was like, yeah, yeah. He was like, keep playing. It's really good. And then I gave up. But then when I went back to it recently, I played the PS4 Definitive Edition or
Definitive
something.
edition.
Definitive
Yeah.
Edition.
Yeah.
I played that one. I knew it was coming, but still, I wasn't emotionally ready for it. And I
It
still
still
felt
gets
like
me.
a whole hole in my heart when I was done. Like, fuck,
Yeah.
my kid's dead.
Yeah. And then it kind of goes quiet for a long period of time as you
hmm
play as Joel, and like he's turned into this very bitter, upset, cold person because of
Yeah,
everything that happened in the beginning. And then it is a bit slow, but then once you stick with it, it obviously does get better. Like the pacing's very slow at the beginning, so I think that's why a lot of people are kind of like, oh, like it starts really good, but now I'm just running. But you do have to kind of stick with it. But yeah, brilliant, brilliant intro.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think after you get past the first exciting part of the game and like emotionally draining bit of the game, it does become a bit of almost like a tutorial level, and then that is really boring. But that's not the game's fault. It's also trying to show you what his life is like. Like he's very closed off. He doesn't deal with other people. He is very much on his own. Enjoys being like the kind of quiet life because obviously of all his trauma and what have you, and what's happening to the world. So it kind of makes sense, but that isn't the most fun to play through. Like you don't necessarily want to play through a sad, depressed moment for like half an
No,
hour. No.
exactly. And like he's obviously living under like a law, like they're
Yeah.
kind of quarantined and like no one can go out and they if anyone might kind of show any signs of being infected, like they shoot them. And like it does generally
It's like now.
yeah, it's
So
I know. It's true. Getting the army involved apparently and all that stuff.
mm,
But yeah, so I feel like they set the scenes amazingly. I feel like even within the first few hours of that game you feel it in the environments, like the storytelling in the environments of that game is brilliant. I'm just gonna fangirl over it, but like it's so good.
it is. Well, and then you meet Tess after that's her
Yes,
name, isn't
and
it? Tess.
you have right, so you have some very interesting thoughts about Tess because you wasn't quite sure of her, was you, when you first played?
I was not sure of her. I didn't trust Tess as far as I could throw her. I I don't know what it was about her. I think it was because when she joins you, you kind of become a little pair, and it's obvious they've got some kind of chemistry. They've known each other, possibly have loved each other. There's some kind of tension between them that shows that they were an item in some way, whether they were friends, workers, lovers, whatever. So you feel like Joel trusts her enough to go on this mission with her. But I don't know if it's just the way that she's portrayed as a character. She just comes across very shady, like that she's got an ulterior motive. And the whole way through, her taking you to go and meet, because you meet Marlene at first, don't you? And then you meet Ellie, our good
Yeah,
old
she
friend Ellie.
basically Marlene's kind of like the one
Sh-
who has the job, shall we say.
Yeah, she's isn't she the leader of the Fireflies? Or I made that up.
No, she's not. No, I don't think she was the leader. I think she's just like part of them. She's like a higher member, but I don't think she like leads them. I think they're more of just like a group of people. I could be totally wrong, but like I'm pretty sure they're just like a group of people.
Yeah, you could be. So she, no, so you meet Marlene, and then you meet Ellie. But when that whole thing that happens with Ellie and Marlene and everything, the whole way I was looking at Tess, thinking, you know something you're not telling me. And even up until the end of her storyline, I didn't trust her. It wasn't until the very last moment that I was like, okay, you were probably good,
See, yeah, and the
and now
weird
you're
thing
dead.
is, like I always trusted her because I thought like she's just as desperate as Joel is to get this deal done because they're in I don't know like in shit, with everything going on. Um, so I was kind of like backing her. I was like, yeah, let's just get this fucking job done, like let's fucking take this girl
Let's
and
get that
sort it
coin.
out. So when the scene happens and it's like her ending, I was quite sad because I think that was like another sad moment. Not as sad as the beginning of the game, but like it's
Mm,
definitely a bit sad because that's when you start like witnessing loss, and it's like,
yeah,
she's, kind of put herself in this position to let you go forward and you hear her get shot, like you're actually playing at that moment she gets shot, and then you run upstairs, you look back down, you can see she's shot on the floor, and it's like they didn't even put that into a cutscene, like they made that a very like interactive part of the game, which I
which
really
side
liked.
note is such a good mechanic.
Hmm.
This game does that quite a few times, and that just is very realistic. Like if you were actually there, you wouldn't just be standing and watching. You know there's danger. You're trying to escape, but you can't help but keep your eye on what's going on. So like, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think that carries out throughout the game, like where you
Hmm.
shouldn't be somewhere, but you always want to kind of explore, and like I said, like the storytelling and the environments and like how the scenes play out, it's really fluid and really good, especially considering that game came out like a long time ago, you
Yeah.
know, and it still holds up today really well. Like I know it's been kind of like upgraded slightly, with like all its textures and everything, but it still plays like awesome for a PS3 game.
Well, before we move on to anything else,
Yep.
I have some thoughts there because I played the PS4 Definitive Edition, which is essentially just I don't even really want to say a remaster of the PS3 version, but it's just the PS3 version with, I don't know, a few better graphics and a bit better this and a bit better that, with a bit of extra polish on top, right?
Mm.
That's all it really is. Um, Probably one of the worst games I've ever played in a long time when it comes to actual playing the game. I don't necessarily think it's the fault of The Last of Us because when I played it on PS3, it did not play like this, but I was plagued by glitches. So just to jump about the story for like a very quick moment, every single time, not every single time, but most of the time I was in a fight, something would happen. There's a few like clips of footage that I've actually got that I sent to you that we can like put on YouTube or something. Where I was attacking an enemy and I went through the wall. I fell through the floor multiple times. There was one, do you know the whole sniper section where you're being sniped and you have to run, you have to get from one end of that kind of town to the other end, all those houses. There was so many times where I was shot through a staircase and then I fell through the floor. Um, I had cut scenes that wouldn't start. I had Ellie start talking when she wasn't supposed to talk, and then she wouldn't talk, which was meant to, and I couldn't progress. So many things happened, and I could not believe the amount of glitches I was encountering. Although when I googled it afterwards, there's like hours and hours of footage of people experiencing glitches in The Last of Us. Now, did you experience any glitches? Because I had like several game breaking ones. I even had the console crash at one point, because the game fucked itself up, and my whole console was like, something isn't right.
No, yeah, I was fortunate enough to not have anything, but I think it was maybe like a HDR issue because
hmm
I never had it and I was never playing on HDR like TV at that point. I only got one recently, like moved into like the future of HDR. Um,
Can that like affect it though? I mean, you will know more than me because you're more so in this industry, but having like, here's an example. There was one simple glitch where I climbed, when you're in that giant hotel place after a big fight, I climbed on top of a table. Joel then felt the need to start acting as if he was falling, and then he just straight up fell through the floor and then died. And it was really, I didn't know what was going on. And that was just one of many.
to be honest, I wouldn't even know. I mean, it's weird for me to say because normally I'd say, well, like, is it happening a lot? And clearly it was happening a lot. So
Yeah.
I don't know. And you said you'd updated it and everything, which
Yeah, I
is weird.
patched it and everything.
Weird situation because yeah, for me it didn't happen. I mean, it probably happened for a lot of people, but I was just really fortunate. Like when I was playing it, it was like flawless. But maybe it is just some clash in tech, you know? Like who knows? Games are complex. Like,
Who knows? Exactly that.
who bloody knows?
Who knows? But no, apart from that, the game played really well. It was really smooth. The gameplay was fine. I really enjoyed the controls. There was one thing that, yeah, there was one thing, but I'll tell you, we'll get to that in just a moment. Like, let's finish off talking about more of the story first, then we'll focus on gameplay because I've got a few things I want to say about that too, as per usual. Yes, and like that whole Tess thing. After she died, I did feel really bad about it. I thought, oh, I probably shouldn't have been so nasty to you because actually, not that Joel was, but I was just like shouting abuse at her through the TV, being like, "This bitch, this
I
fucking
don't
snake,
trust this girl.
this I don't trust this snake. I can see her for a mile off. I see you." So yeah, so the whole reason you meet up with Tess is she takes you to go meet Marlene, and you meet the other main character of the series. You meet Miss Ellie.
Yeah.
Do we like Ellie? Do we hate Ellie? What do you think?
I have always loved Ellie and I
hmm
still very much love Ellie. No matter what's happened since that game, I'm still very much team Ellie.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Interesting. No, I really enjoy Ellie. I think she is so well written as a character. So is Joel. Really. I think their chemistry is probably some of the best chemistry I've seen in a game for ages. I
Yeah.
can't really think, apart from maybe someone like um Atreus and God of War, like Kratos, like that's quite a good chemistry. But Joel and Ellie, I think in a long time, that's some of the best chemistry I've seen like on screen in the game. I think the way they interact with each other is so good, and you really get to see their development of like literal strangers to come to becoming friends to her almost becoming like a replacement daughter. Like they go through some proper ups and downs, and you really feel it all of it. Like it feels real. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel falsified in any way.
And it's quite interesting because obviously when they were doing auditions and Troy Baker walked in for the role of obviously Joel, he's
hmm
obviously he was a lot younger than his character as Joel.
Oh right,
And
okay.
obviously they were just like she was just like, oh my god, he just looks too young. And then their chemistry just shows like obviously in the actual game. But they do, and like I absolutely adore Ellie. I love how much she grows as a character. Like
hmm
he's very much like protective of her. And he will
Yeah.
not let her do anything. He will not let her have like any kind of weapon or anything like that. And then obviously as the game goes along, like you start to see a different side to her and she's just like like I can handle myself. Like if anything, I'm more invisible than you are because she's immune, you know? So it's like
Yeah.
you just really watch her kind of grow and come into her own, and her personality as well. Like she loves her little joke books, and like I always kind of saw I always kind of saw a lot of myself in her, but like I kind of did because I feel like
She does kind of remind me of you.
I just love how she's just a bit goofy and she's a bit kind of like angry as well, but she's
Yeah.
also very sentimental. Like that's kind of like how I'd imagine I would have been if that was me in that situation. I'd have kind of just been a bit carefree. I'd have, you know what I mean, and like kind of been a bit
Yeah.
excited about it. So
She has
yeah,
that attitude of being like a typical teenage tomboy, doesn't she? Like
which is
n-
great because
struggling with her identity a little bit in a mixed up world, but she's also like this thing to be praised because oh my god, she's the only opportunity for us to save the world. So there's a lot of pressure on her little shoulders, and that really
yeah,
comes through.
and it's really nice to have a character that like that isn't so typical. You know, like
That isn't a
they could
straight white boy.
yeah, either a straight white boy or like a blonde. Like no offense to like straight white boys or like blonde girls, but like it's not like this kind of this blonde girl who's like this little kind of pure angel who's like immune and like nothing can touch her, and maybe she like runs and she falls over all the time and she's like
hmm
fucking, you know what I mean? Like she was like a proper person, and I feel like
Yeah,
the character development was just ideal because yeah, it was just nice to see that. It was nice to have someone with a different kind of yeah, like background, and like even how she dresses and everything, it was just
yeah,
very like normal, and it was more something that I could relate to. And I feel like that game is like the epitome of like relation, you know what I mean? Like there's something that happens that everyone can relate to if you were put in that position, you know what I mean? Which is
yeah.
very good. Which brings us to like more harder choices, but we'll come to that. But yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think it was done so well. I think her character is just written so well. I think all of her behavior starts to make sense as the game goes along because you start to understand like her own troubled past and like not only she got this big kind of destiny that she's been told is waiting for her, she's also not in control of a lot of things. She's almost like a package. Like she's literally called I think she's even referred to as a package at one point. Like
Yeah.
you are literally picking her up and dropping her off so you can go and have her like basically harvested to fix this whole pandemic that's happening in their world. So she is literally just she's breathing for the sake of transportation. Do you know what I mean? And she knows that really, even though Joel doesn't know that straight away, she knows it the whole time. So she probably thinks, well, this the only thing I can control is the way I act and the way I am. So that's all I'm gonna make all my decisions because sometimes she does make. And I can't really think of like a specific example, but she does come across sometimes a bit random, like her anger. Sometimes you think, well, where did that come from? Where she like explodes a lot. But then when you get later on in the game, you think, oh, actually, that's probably because she knows this was coming and she knows that. And she's a bit like fucked up from it, basically.
Yeah. But the thing is she's always very like yeah, she kind of always trusts in her ability to be immune, and like that is her
Yeah.
sole purpose. And it's like yeah, like she just follows it through like right up until the end. She's very much like, well, this is my purpose sort of thing.
Yeah.
And she like I know they didn't I know obviously like it is kind of they did kind of want her to be like Joel's actual daughter,
hmm
but you do see a lot of similarities. Like even within that short section where you do play as Joel's daughter in the beginning, even when she's just running around the house,
Yeah.
even then you kind of get that same personality. Like she's a bit of a joker. Like
Yeah.
she gets him a watch and then he acts like it doesn't work and stuff. And it's kind of just like they kind of fed that through really well. So you already feel like you already know Ellie before you actually know her, if that makes sense.
That's quite true. I feel like his daughter and Ellie share a similar personality. Like the whole like joke about what does he say to her? Like, you bought me the watch, and she's like, well, all those like drugs that I've been selling on the side have
Yeah.
finally paid off or whatever. Like that kind of like comical humor coming from such a young girl is then seen again in Ellie. So it is really like a clone of his daughter.
Yeah.
I do really like in this game as well how the even though she's quite resistant to him at the beginning, and he's kind of resistant to her because probably of what she represents, like a teenage girl who's very similar to his daughter. He probably wants nothing to do with her because of the bad memories. But she's quite resistant to him as well. And I think it's really nice how you get to see a proper I don't know, you get to see her slowly take on his lessons and like you get to find out that actually she is listening to him. And even though she's quite resistant to his, teachings, she is taking them on board. And like it always brings me to that one point that messed me up massively. And it's when you are, where are you? You've gone to the hospital So you've been on like quite a journey with Ellie, and you've gone to like a lots of different cities and things, trying to find these people, these fireflies that want her, and then you end up. I can't even remember where you are. It's somewhere snowy. I don't want to embarrass myself and say like, oh, it's Alaska because like, I can't remember, but it's somewhere really cold that you go to. And when you're in this mall, this like dilapidated mall fighting, Joel then falls from a balcony and he has like a nail or a bit of glass or something that shoots through his basically the side of his stomach. And then that freaked me out because I was convinced that this game, halfway through, Joel was going to die and you were going to take over as Ellie. That was how I always saw it. I was like, Joel is a temporary character. He's here to introduce Ellie, and I'm going to be Ellie for the rest of the game. I know it. And then like he actually got up and he was dragging himself along, and I actually then really feared for Ellie's safety.
Yeah.
Like that was it really put me in the position of her dad or her carer, and I was like, oh my god, I now don't care about Joel. I keep blacking out, and I need to keep her safe. And that was the one bit where like you got to play the game as Joel was blacking out, and you were still able to control him. And I thought that was such a clever mechanic because you feel like, oh my god, I need to help her, and I can't. I'm actually dying. I'm actually scared of what those people are going to do to her if I can't shoot them in time. Like that
But
was a
she,
really good bit.
yeah, and she like proper proves herself because obviously like
Hmm.
as you're playing and you're like falling over and you're like, okay, I actually can't even move, like you can't even climb over things, and
Hmm.
she's still calling him and she's still fighting, and it kind of solidifies the fact that she can do it and he's actually not as invisible as he thought he was, and
Yeah,
like he can't be her like guardian as much as like he wants to be, because obviously they do have some clashes where she feels very much like she's a burden and she kind of
yeah,
tries to go away from him, and then he's very much like, well, I'm just going to leave you with him and things like that, do you know what I mean? And it's like they have all
yeah,
this clash, and then the roles reverse, and then obviously they reverse again. But like she does, yeah, she definitely comes into her own. So like it is really nice to see that, and it's like you said, like that mechanic and that it generally makes you feel like you don't realize how connected you are to the characters until you get to that point and you think, oh my god, she's alone. Like, what's she gonna do? Like,
yeah. I spent
so
my time
clever.
being like, if I die, she's fucked. Like, what am I gonna like? And you then just think like, actually, I care more about her safety than I do my own character safety. Like Joel was actually slowly dying, and I was like, no, no, she needs to live. Like, and it was quite weird. I actually had to stop for a second. I was like, Jesus Christ! Like, I'm actually thinking that about this like computerized girl on screen. Like, what the hell? I
Yeah,
thought it was so good at like manipulating your emotions. Like, it really did make me feel like I was solely responsible for her, and I had to help her.
yeah, exactly. It's so cleverly done. Like,
Hmm.
it is just like a film, isn't it? Like you really do kind of get attached to it. I mean, once I'd started going, I personally couldn't put the game down. I was like, this is
Same.
just like hitting things. Like I ain't played a game that I felt like this emotionally attached to, like probably in my life, you know, like
Yeah.
where I actually care about a character that's not real. Like
Hmm.
apart from Meryl when I was like 10, I was like heartbroken by Meryl Metal Gear Solid. But
For Metal
like,
Gear, yeah.
yeah, but apart from that,
Oh, poor old Meryl
poor Meryl had a rough
getting
time.
slapped about.
I know. I think Ellie had it harder, but like still.
Maybe just a touch, yeah.
Yeah.
um, Definitely, I felt the same. I felt myself really caring for her at like many different parts of the game. I mean, there's even the other scene. This happens to her, like multiple times, the poor girl. But like, you really see a development shift in her, and it happens also just after that scene. So after she's like, um, she is saved, or not saved. Let's start again. So after Joel and her manage to escape that mall, and they get on the horse, and Joel is clearly dying, like he's clearly not got very much left in him, and he's literally running on adrenaline, sitting up on this horse, and then he blacks out and just that's it. And you think he's dead, and I was like, that's it. Joel's done. I'm gonna be Ellie now. So then when I was Ellie, I was like, oh, he's still alive. I have to help him. Now that whole thing of where like the role reversed, like you said, and she's got to look after him, and she's got to go and find supplies to keep him alive and what have you, and she like bandages him up and stuff. Like I felt very protective of Joel then, but then it wasn't until you get deeper into this like fucking cult hick town that you arrive in, and she gets captured, and that guy basically really creepily comes onto her and
Yeah.
offers her the choice of either
Well,
fucking him or being eaten, basically.
yeah, that's that. Yeah, exactly. Like that's how I think most players took it. But
Yeah.
according to Neil Druckmann, it was literally a case of they never explicitly said
No.
what was what. They said
No.
that's entirely up to the player's interpretation. And obviously that's the conclusion I think quite a lot of people come to, but it's
Yeah.
still very cleverly done because it doesn't necessarily mean anything. He's a bit
No.
creepy. He kind of says he's trying to help her and he's a bit manipulative, and then he kind of touches her and she holds his hand, and that does kind of lead you in a direction where she's sort of playing up to that a bit, and she's like, okay, I'm going to act like this innocent girl. But then
Yes.
she snaps and you're like, yes, Ellie's back in the room, like, even though she kind of got a bit ahead of herself and got herself caught, like,
Yeah.
again, it's all like it's all in your mind, like it's all up to your interpretation. Most of those choices or scenarios, not even choices, it's not that you can make a choice, but you feel
No.
like you are making a choice, you know what I mean? It's weird.
I
It's
just
good.
thought that was so well done though, because like you said, it doesn't actually say anything sexual to her, and doesn't actually use any dodgy words or anything about what he's going to do to her. It's just the way that he's like a lech, like breathing down. He's like, what's the actual wording that he says something like, you're making it difficult to keep you alive, or you're making it
Yeah,
difficult for me to help you. And then you almost get put in the position of like, I'm staring at, down the barrel of a gun, essentially. Joel's dying. I need to get back to him. Maybe I'm going to have to do something with this guy, or maybe I'm going to have to, like, she's going to have to give in to him. And, like, it's really a turning point in her story where she then holds his hand through that little jail cell. And it almost looks like he's won his prize. And then she fucking breaks his finger. And I think it's one
which
of the
I fucking absolutely love, because I feel like
love it.
a lot of games would, well, not a lot of games, that's the wrong, but a lot of media would have, that would have gone the expected way,
Yeah.
like it would have been like a silly girl who's like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this now to survive. It's like, not fucking Ellie. Like,
Yeah.
she made a stand. So I think that's what made me love her more, because it was like, this girl is like actually doing something, like she's not gonna go,
Proper.
go with the flow. But then obviously it follows on to the scene where you're in that burning building and
Yes.
you're having, it's kind of like she's the prey and he's the hunter, and you're having to distract him to try and hit him. And then again, we have another scenario where he climbs on top of her after she's kind of fought with him. And you
Yeah.
think, where's this going to go? And it's up to interpretation, like, quote unquote. And then obviously Joel comes in and you're like, thank God, like, he's okay. Like,
But there's something so important in those scenes. Like, I really do like how those two scenes really do give Ellie, they give her character, like, it almost is her turning point. Like, it grows her up a little bit, those moments, because it's when she realizes that actually she does have a weakness in this vicious world, and it is simply the fact that she's a woman. And like, I think that she learns that, but it's not like she's got the, it's not that it is a weakness, but she learns that actually in some ways she will be targeted for certain things, and that she has to keep her wits about her. I mean, even like when she's in the prison cell and she snaps his finger, she could very easily have done something different, like almost gone along with the plan, and then when he lets her out, try a different way of escaping that was very sneaky. And I feel like if it was like a Hollywood film, that's how it would go. She'd play along for a couple of minutes, like, oh, where can we go? What can we do? And then when he gets her out of the cell, she'd then make a break for it by like kicking him in the balls or something, like typical like movie tropes. But no, she just makes the effort to snap his finger in half and fucking let him
yeah.
know that he's a dick. And then in that burning building, like, him being on top of her, basically, let's just say he looks like he's going to rape her or attack her or assault her in some way. But what I really love about that scene is that she saves herself. Joel doesn't save her. Like, it's still that moment of like, I did this. Like, I was faced with the worst thing that can possibly happen to me, an old lech on top of me, about to take advantage of me, and I saved myself. Oh, that was such a key moment. Like, because it could have been so easy for them Joel just to put a bullet through his head and be like, you still need me because you're just a girl, and you need your big strong man here. But like, it
yeah.
definitely shows that she's been faced with the worst thing that a woman in that position could be faced with, and she still managed to flip it around and get herself out.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
thought that was so
yeah,
cool.
exactly. And I think that's the overall kind of, I think that's what made this game really kind of stand out. Whether a lot of
Hmm.
people noticed it or not, a lot of like young girls will have noticed it, like,
Hmm.
and obviously you've noticed it, but like a lot of like girls in of that mindset would have thought, "Do you know what? Like, it's so great to see like a young like female character have such like a independence on
Yeah,
things." And I think that's what I really appreciate about the game, is the fact that they do push the stereotypes and they always kind of jumble them up, and you're just
like
like,
shatter them.
yeah. And they bring up topics like, that other games just would never bring up, you know, like
Hmm.
the fact that, you know, Joel lost his daughter and she died in his arms. Like, not no other game would really put you in that position.
No.
And I just think it's really important, and it's so good that like they're using that medium to do it. And I feel like Last of
Hmm.
Us just hit the nail on the head for that. So bravo. Loved it.
So
Good old Ellie.
touche, Naughty Dog. Yeah, well
Yeah,
done.
well
Um,
done.
I really loved it. I thought their characters were written. I thought their characters were written so well, and I thought they really did explore every avenue. And like you said, I really like how they feature the stereotypes in the game and then shatter them. So having, the big strong hero trope, or he's wounded and stuck somewhere, and the poor little girl who's going to be attacked by an older, scarier man, but she flips it around and saves herself. Like they always introduce what you think is going to happen, and then completely flip it on his head, which I really really liked.
Yeah,
But
keeps you hooked.
it really really does. Um, yeah. So then the story kind of takes like an interesting turn. I might have got my timeline mixed up here, but you come across, is it Sam and Henry,
Mm.
the two people that you meet in the toy shop.
Yeah,
So Sam's the younger one. Sam's the little boy.
yeah,
So Sam is the younger boy, and then Henry is the older brother. Is he? I think he's his brother, isn't he?
yeah,
So you meet those two at the toy shop, and you kind of learn that they're just like you, really, trying to stay alive. But obviously, Sam is not the same as Ellie. But you're trying to stay alive, and it's kind of your only option, really, isn't it, to work together and kind of keep each other safe.
yeah.
So
Because naturally, Joel's very like defensive of them, but they are
yeah,
essentially like a mirror image, aren't they? It's like an older person and a younger person trying to like survive, and they kind of
yeah.
relax a bit, and they're thinking, okay, so like we've made some friends now, like we're both trying to get out of stuff, and like they do kind of take care of each other. Um, so it opens up like a whole new emotional roller coaster of like characters and what's going to happen to them, you know? Like,
It does. I thought that bit was quite interesting because you seem to have, even though you're only with them a very short time, you do develop quite a decent bond with them because you realize from going through their flat or their apartment, we're in America, going through their like apartment and then going through the rest of the like the block of apartments, that they're actually that they used to live there, and they're just normal people and blah blah blah
yeah,
blah.
they're just waiting to like find their time. And obviously Ellie finally finds someone who's of a similar age,
Yeah,
and she finally has kind of like a little friend, and she almost feels responsible for him because I think she sees that he's not as kind of developed as she is in the sense of like
yeah.
their survival skills. So she looks at him as a friend, but also as like, you know, her like
Someone's almost mentor, I suppose.
exactly. That's the feeling that I got from it. Exactly.
But then there's that betrayal scene where you're trying to get up on the truck
Yeah.
and they ditch you. And I think Ellie makes it up, doesn't she? But then she chooses to jump back down with you. Is that
Yeah.
have I got that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting to me because as soon as they run off, I thought, pricks. I thought I just fucking helped you.
You
I was
hated the
like,
wrong you hated Tess and it weren't even
yeah,
Tess.
exactly. It wasn't even Tess. Hated Tess, and she didn't even snake me. She just died.
No, she just
It
died.
was-
She just gave in and like, you know, looked out for you. But they do come back, and it's another bloody scenario of like are we friends or not? And obviously they come back for them, and then I think Joel kind of it's a lesson for Joel again is to
yeah.
forgive and forget just to fucking survive, you know, which is cool. It's another lesson. Like this game is just full of lessons. Like
It's full of lessons. I feel like as a character, I would have found it hard to forgive them. But as a player, you get it. You're like, okay, because you're like outside almost. You can see that they've got to survive just as much as you got to survive. Your story means nothing to them, just like their story means nothing to you. Like everyone's just trying to keep themselves alive. And then you have to fight your way through that sniper moment. Not a
mm,
good moment for me because experience the fucking heyday of my glitches was there. And also the other bit where you go through the underground sewers and you learn about the families that live down there. That was quite sad, that bit. We learned about all the families that lived in the sewers, and you found like the little football game and all that kind of shit. And like, when you
yeah.
break out and the door says do not enter,
And you should never have entered, but you
you should
do,
never
and
have
it's
entered.
like about 50 million bloody
But it's not
infected.
until you get to the end, though, is it? When you get
No.
out of it and close the door, it's like, do not enter, whatever they're called, clickers inside. And you're like, oh, shit. Oh, well. But
Yeah.
yeah, very funny bit. I want to say what happens next. I fucking called that. I knew the little boy was infected. Did you?
I got an eye. Well, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no because I weren't
Really?
sure. But then he didn't want his toy, and I was like, why doesn't he want that toy? And then I guess I guess like as Ellie left him and he kind of throws it down and looks a bit longingly and asks about death, I was starting to think, oh no. Like I weren't sure because I thought, are they going to do it that obviously? Like, is it going to be that
Hmm.
obvious? But then obviously it was, so I was like a bit like,
I think I even texted you at the time, and I was like, "This bitch is definitely
That's
infected."
all you did.
Yeah,
The whole
yeah.
time he was playing this, he was literally like, "Oh, I knew this. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I knew this." And I was like, "Just finish it. I want to talk about the end." Like, oh.
I was getting so excited because I was. This is the thing. This is why I ruin films for myself because my brain is always like working. I'm trying to guess what's happening. I always try
Mm.
and predict what's going to happen because I'm like mentally ill. So like the second something happens, I'm like, he's infected. He's gonna die. He's gonna fucking snake me. The other one's gonna do this. Like I just know I can predict what's gonna happen. Then when he reveals himself to be infected, I will say I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought either the brother was going to get bitten or he was going to join me for like a moment and then fuck off somewhere else. Didn't expect him to put a bullet through his own head.
No, but
That
at
was
the same
interesting.
time, you kind of, yeah, like that. Yeah, that was a different turning point, and you think, wow. But then it's like, well, I guess he has nothing else to live for because he lived for his brother, didn't he? And then his
Yeah,
brother got bit, and it was kind of a bit like shit. But again, it's another topic that you don't normally see people, doing
explore.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, which was good,
definitely.
real life and all that.
I think the story is very, very good. I think the really only thing to talk about next, the only important part is the end of the game.
Oh my god,
So,
the end.
and then we'll get on to gameplay and stuff. But the end of this story, I will say, this did confuse me a little bit. Considering I try and guess everything, this bit did throw me for a loop. So the basic premise is that you eventually arrive at the place of the fireflies. You go to a few more places in between here and the end, but you eventually find your way to the fireflies after meeting Joel's brother and his wife and stuff and what have you. And you basically end up being hurt, don't you? I can't remember exactly how it happens, but you fall through the water. You fall. You're going through a bridge, and you end up getting a little bit hurt. And they knock Joel out, don't they? Because they think that they're not quite sure who he is. And then when you wake up, you're in the facility, and Ellie's been taken away from you. And then you meet Marlene, who then explains to you that thank you for bringing her here. Everything's fine. She's prepped and ready for surgery. You can go when after you've like healed up. And
And
Joel's a
he,
bit
yeah,
like, yeah, he's just a bit like, well, can I say hello to her? Can I say goodbye to her? Where is she?
because
What's going on?
I don't, well, he went into the job completely blind, didn't he? And
Hmm.
he didn't know that surgery was going to be a thing. He had absolutely
Yeah.
no idea, like that. He thought maybe they're just going to take some bloods and they're going to get, this like vaccine or whatever there. Didn't
Hmm.
understand that it was surgery in her fucking brain.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah,
like
so he
would
gets,
kill her, not even a chance. Like she
yeah,
was going to be killed.
and she never got the option, and he was annoyed because he was like, well, surely I should have a say in this because he feels like
Hmm.
he's a caregiver now, doesn't he? Even though she's proven herself to make her own decisions, but
Yeah.
not even she was made aware of it. I don't know. She's not even made aware of it, and this is
I
when
don't
it
think she
starts.
knew. No.
This is where the game starts to get quite like ethically kind of what's the word?
That's kind of the right thing. Like morally, like it's your first like ethical moral choice that you're kind of like dealing with.
Yeah,
Like
and
because really, it's the few over the many over the
yeah,
few. Like what
there's
do
a
you
lot of
do?
there's a lot of like there's a big divide in a lot of people saying that they agree with it, that they didn't agree with it, and I think that was
Hmm.
like a really interesting take on this part of the game. So yeah, obviously you get there, Joel's just like, okay, well, what's going on? And she's
Hmm.
kind of like, well, it has to happen. Like, we have to, if there's a chance, then we've got to take the chance. And he's
Yeah.
a bit like, well, excuse me, like, I've just took her all the way over here. You're not even going to let me talk to her. Um, she doesn't even know. She has no choice in this. And that's when it all goes a little bit haywire, which I don't blame
It
him.
all
I,
goes
I
tits
would have
up.
done it. I feel like I would have done the same in that.
I feel like I would have been very selfish and done the same too, because even though, okay, aside from the fact that it was never confirmed whether or not that would actually work, it was just a pipe dream. When you think about it, you would do that because it's the selfish thing to do. Like at the end of the day, even if she was to work, there's not really much of a civilization left to save. It's not as if they could create this vaccine and overnight it would be fine. And then you start to think, well, if Ellie's, not vulnerable to this disease, is there anyone else that's not vulnerable to the disease? Like lots of different things go through your head. But I straight away was like, no, we're about to blow this whole fucking building up and I'm going to drag Ellie out of here because this isn't the one. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Like that would be my natural reaction in person as well. I'd be like, no, I don't think so. We're about to set fire to this fucking
Yeah,
thing. Let's do this.
exactly. Because like you just care about her so much, and you're
Hmm.
like, this is ridiculous. Like, she can't have traveled all this way. We cannot have gone through everything that we went through for
Yeah,
you to just kill her without her knowing.
yeah. You've
And
basically raised her because
exactly,
she's
and
grown. Like it's been like years, hasn't it?
yeah, and a lot of people will say, well, actually, no. You have to help the majority. But I'm on that selfish side. And I was like,
Hmm.
no, we are saving this girl. And the whole scene where he like you eventually fight your way through like loads of enemies, and then you get
And
in
some unarmed doctors.
and some unarmed doctors. Yeah, because that's a really great like that whole scene, that whole playable intro to that scene is you go
Yeah.
through the door, you've got the alarm going, which is eerie enough. I mean, everyone knows that hospitals are creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
The lights are going, the lighting in that game is awesome. And you're just slowly walking towards a door that has the fireflies on it, and alarms going, it's all red. You go in the door, you see like the silhouettes, you hear them talking, and it's like
Hmm.
it's so kind of like eerie because it's like, oh my god, like you could just
I
feel like
could
you're
just walk
there.
away.
Exactly, you could just turn
Yeah.
away and possibly the world's fixed, but you're gonna hurt more because you've lost another daughter in a sense.
Hmm.
But then obviously goes in, have a good old shoot up, carry her off, and then you meet Marlene outside the lift, and you're like, and she's like, we have to do this, like we can't stop it. And he could have run away, but then she gets the gun out, and it all gets a bit it gets a bit messy. But
Yeah.
I'm Team Joel for that.
I'm Team Joel. I mean, in real life, if it was happening, I'd like to think that I'd be super ethical and be like, I'm really sorry, Ellie, but we've got to save the planet. Like, we've got to think of the more, save the more over the few, blah 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 blah. But no, like in this game, like you've got to think Joel's been through a shit ton in his life, and he can't now have raised another daughter to be independent to then lose her again. Like it's just history repeating itself. So you can tell why he had that reaction. Because obviously we didn't actually have a choice. But even if they gave me a choice, I still would have made the same choice. I would have busted her out of there because you start to find out after reading through the diaries as well. You find out that Marlene, even though we think of her as this big bitch, has actually wrestled with this decision herself. Like you find a lot of files where she's like, I think it was like because of the it was like Ellie's mum was one of her very good mates, and she was like really good friends with her, and she helped raise Ellie, and she didn't really want to face the truth at first of what she had to do to Ellie, all this kind of stuff. So you see
Yeah,
that like a lot of people have wrestled with it, but then when you actually read that Marlene has wrestled with the decision and then made the decision that she's made, even though you probably know ethically it's the right thing to do, it still hurts. And you think, fuck you, Marlene. Like, you know her even more than I do. Like, you've known her from as a baby and you've raised her purposefully to off her. Like, that's really fucked up.
yeah, definitely.
And then what got me at the end, this is the bit I had to then speak to you about because I didn't quite get it. I don't know if I wasn't paying attention or I was tired or what. But the ending, the very end. So after you rescue Ellie from the fireflies, she then comes to in the back of a car and says like what's going on, and you basically say to her, don't worry, everything's fine. And then you explain to her that there's others like her and tell her that there's others like you, you're not the only one, the fireflies were lying, there's lots of little Ellies out there who are immune to the disease, and there's lots of other choices, and I was not going to let them destroy you when there's other research that can be done, blah blah blah. But then later on she asked you to swear to her you were telling her the truth, and I was a bit like, wait, what? And it never actually fully explained that, but then what you got from it was that basically he was lying to her.
Yeah, so she's just coming around in the car as they're driving, and he just turns around and he's just like, she's like, what happened? And he's like, oh yeah, like it's fine, there was loads of people like that, like you just said, but
Hmm.
literally like no kind of inkling that he killed all of them.
Yeah, he
It's
wiped out the building.
it's like you know what, you're fine. I may have just destroyed the only chance, but like it's cool, babe.
It's
Just like have a
fine,
nap.
mum, don't worry.
And it is when you start to make your way back to Tommy's um place,
Mm.
she just
Compound.
I think she starts to kind of, obviously she must have been stewing over it, and that you climb up this rock, and then she just asks him like outright like, is it just promise me, like swear to me what you're saying is the truth. And then he just looks at her and he's just like, I swear. And I remember I was like, oh my god, because that was a lie, and you've just looked her in the eye and you've just said I swear, and she's like, okay. She just says
Yeah.
okay, and then it's like pfft. And I was like, do not end, like do not end. So I was like really torn because I was like, he should have told her, But it was I loved how it ended. It ended on such like a cliffhanger. But again, I guess everyone could have taken it how they wanted to take it.
Yeah.
You know, it was like one of those things. But
It left it open for interpretation,
yeah,
which I appreciated.
yeah, definitely. I don't think he should have lied to her. I think she proved herself to be old enough, mature enough to understand. But I
Yeah.
think he knew in the sense of him doing that that he was selfish. And like even though it's technically you think it's not selfish, like he saved someone. He did it for his own benefit, not for what Ellie would have wanted. And Ellie's
Yeah.
immunity was like the only thing that mattered. This is why you need to play part two, because I just
I know. I will definitely get on to part two so we can talk about it. But then I think this was what makes you like you understand a bit more about Ellie here as well, because this is when it comes clear that if he did tell her the truth, I feel like she probably would have made a break for it and gone back to the Fireflies than almost to kill her and sort it. Because you learn that she then had a friend who she tells you this whole story about, which you then get to play as DLC,
yeah.
that had a whole friend that became infected and they both became infected and she watched her slowly die. Basically they both thought they were dying, turns out only one of them was dying and that she was completely fine. So she's like seeing the effects of this disease on like personal close friends and family as well, and she wants to stop it, and knowing that she is the key, you know, quote unquote, to fixing everything kind of like fucks with her head a little bit. And I do get the feeling from Joel that if he was to say, do you know what, you were the only thing that would have stopped it, should have gone, cool, no problem, got a horse and just ridden straight back and been like, cut me open, let's do this. Like you can tell that she wants to be part of something bigger. She wants to give herself up to she feels that she's got nothing left apart from Joel, so she wants to give herself over to fix the world. Like if she can, she will.
Yeah. And I guess you can say, well, obviously it's sad that she doesn't get to make that choice. Like it's
Hmm.
her life at the end of the day. She's the one who's immune. She's the one who only really has the right to make that decision.
Yeah.
And yet Joel's made all those decisions. And not even all those decisions. He's literally killed the one person that could have possibly helped and
Yeah.
lied about it. So it's like not only has he murdered loads of innocent people that are trying to help the world, he's denied Ellie of any kind of like decision and
Hmm.
he's just lied about everything. And it's like, okay, he's not a bad person, but like when you if you were to like not give them that backstory and just say, okay, so this girl could have saved the world, but this guy killed everyone and then lied
Yeah.
to her, you'd be like, that's a baddie, you
He's the
know?
villain of the story. You essentially are the villain. And it's such
But
an
yeah.
interesting turnaround because you never ever for 1 second, even at the end when you make that choice to save her, you never think you're doing something that detrimental. Like you never consider yourself the villain. You're like, no, I'm saving Ellie. I'm doing this. I'm saving this. I'm trying to deliver her. That's why I'm killing all these people. But then when you finish it, you're like, fuck, I was the bad guy the whole time.
Mm.
Like I I basically undid all of my good work at the very end by murdering everyone. And obviously we're happy he did that because he saved Ellie and what have you, but you are the bad person.
Yeah, I guess it's yeah.
For shame,
Essentially,
Joel. For shame.
for shame. Essentially, yeah. I guess he is the bad person, but again, it's one of those like divisive things where if I got that opportunity to make those decisions and that game gave you the choice,
I
I would
still would have made the
probably
same decisions.
I would have killed everyone and saved the girl. Like that would
Yeah,
have been the plan. So
definitely.
what a game though. Like it's just such like I feel like it's just a timeless game, you know? Like when we're on like the PlayStation 15, I'll still be like, what a game, you know?
When's Last of Us 22 coming out? Can't wait.
I don't want it to ever end, but like yeah.
Well, we did have this conversation very briefly before we talk about gameplay. Um, we had this conversation. We had this conversation before where you said, "Do I think the game deserves a part two? Not deserves part two. Did I think the game was set up for a part two?"
Yeah.
And I
Did we
said to you,
disagree on that? I
"We
feel
did a
like we
little
did.
bit."
Yeah.
I mean, I said that I thought the game, it could have had a part two. Like if you forget part two's out, if you just focus on the first one, I think it leaves room for a part two where you could say, I mean, I've never played the second one, but let's say maybe Ellie discovers what her true path is and goes searching for the fireflies, or maybe Joel dies and she then becomes a lone soldier and goes off on her own little journey. There's so many things that could happen in a part two. Did it need a part two? I don't know. I feel like you could happily leave the story there and it could all be up to interpretation, but that's just not how things work in the gaming world, is it? Like people want more, and like
Yeah.
they're gonna get more. I think
I
a
wanted
part two was a good idea.
Yeah,
Well, I haven't
I
played it yet, but you know.
no, but I feel like it answers a lot on the first game, but it is such a different experience, like from the first game. I've told you before, like it
Yeah.
literally, like I thought that the first game had its emotional moments, but like you kind of get by. The second game, it was almost like we would, I guess a lot of people felt like they were tortured playing it because of some of the stuff that happened, but it's so good. Yeah, a lot of people say it's not a masterpiece, but like I'm just gonna let you all know that you're fucking wrong, and it is okay. So spin it out there, just because the storytelling in it is awesome. I mean, I guess it's gonna turn into like a Last of Us Part Two podcast if I keep it going on. But yeah,
Yeah.
I look forward to like you eventually playing it and like having your own opinions. But the game, I feel like was a decent sequel to the first one.
Okay, I'm gonna try and play it this week, and then we can next week have our episode on Last of Us Part Two. How would that make you feel?
Happy.
Okay, we'll
I've
do.
got a lot to talk about, and a lot of people haven't played it because they've either not like, a lot of people that I know. I don't think I've ever actually had a really like in-depth conversation about it, which is quite
Hmm.
like sad about the game.
So you're ready and raring to go.
So ready, like so ready, and I want more Last of Us all the
Love
time,
it.
all the time.
And I can't wait to talk about it actually because it has been a big point of contention with the
Yeah,
fans, which we don't have to go into now. But calm the hate down on Twitter, everyone. Fuck's sake. Anyway,
it's still happening now though. That's the thing.
I
A lot
know
like as people are rounding up the year's games, they're saying, "Well, what was your game of the year? 2020, blah blah blah." And a lot of people are like, you know, whoever says Last of Us Part Two, like you're stupid. It's a shit game. Naughty Dog should be ashamed. And I just think to myself, like, why? Like, what about that was bad? You
what are
know?
you adding to the conversation? Isn't it? I mean, like at the end of the day, you can have your own opinion on the game, but wishing the developers all die of cancer and their family dies of cancer is like probably a step too far. Like
Very much
maybe you
step
should
too far.
rethink that tweet before you press send. Like, who is writing that? Who is writing like, oh my god, you fucked up my game. I hope your whole family dies of cancer. Like, what the fuck? Like,
It's
who
just
writes that and think, yeah, that will show them. Like, what?
I know. I feel like as gamers these days, like we do get passionate about stuff, like, and that's totally brilliant. Like, I love games, like we all care about it, but you need to know when to just appreciate the art and
And
the work that's gone into it. And if you're talking about it, it's obviously fucking good, mate, because you can't seem to let it go. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
exactly,
but yeah, I
you need to know when just to calm your tits.
yeah, and just appreciate it. Like, there's no game like it, and that's the thing. It's like, can you say there's another game that's like Last of Us One or Last of Us Part Two? Not a
Absolutely not.
single game. So pipe down. I'll stop
Pipe
being an
down, bitch.
absolute warrior of Naughty Dog right now.
The
I
defender of
can't
Naughty Dog.
help it. I just love it. Like I said, I love games with stories, and that is a really good story.
Is a really good one. Aside from the story, I do think it played really well. Like from a game
Yeah.
perspective, I thought it looked beautiful. I thought it was really well done, really well designed. Um, the writing, the game was fantastic. The characters are really good. The gameplay itself, there's a few things that I really liked about the gameplay, and there's a few things that was a bit dodgy. I'm not quite
Mm.
sure. Um, I really liked the way that you access the menu. I know it's a really random thing to talk about, but I really liked how the game didn't pause behind you. It made it feel very realistic. So there's a lot of times, like in a shootout, I was had to swap weapons or go through my arm, go through my backpack and equip something different or whatever, or heal myself. Everything had to be done on the fly, which is annoying from a gameplay perspective, but it's real. Like, if it was real life and I was bleeding out my arm and I was having shots fired at me, I can't pause the world and go through my inventory and make up bandages. Like, you have to put it on there and then and sort yourself out. Like, I felt like it was very real. It felt very lifelike. Like, shit, my health's dropping and Ellie's over there. I can't get to her. I need to apply a bandage. I have to quickly put this on. And as like they're coming towards you, you've got to do it quicker and quicker and sort yourself out. Like, I really liked that whole aspect to it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like it is very live action, and you have to obviously craft stuff. So
Hmm.
you kind of see them like in the bag, like really trying to quickly craft things, and there's like clickers crawling around, and yeah, I thought the gameplay was awesome, and the UI of it, like it's so
Yeah,
simple, but like it just kind
effective.
yeah, it just really fitted it, and yeah, like you said, like I did like the fact of just kind of holding up the buttons and like scanning through it, and yeah, it was clever because a lot of games will. make you pause and then take two items and combine it. Whereas with that, it was all done like on the go and everything was kind
Yeah.
of already pre-made. You just had to click OK. And I don't know, just yeah, it was really nice. Like, and yeah, cool.
I think it adds the I think it adds the experience because one, it's like happening in real time, so it doesn't slow the game down anymore because you haven't got to pause it and do anything. But also, like it's very lifelike because you have to make sure you're keeping yourself alive. You're balancing so many different variables. Like there's three guys over there. You know, I've taken out two of them. I now have a bit of time to quickly do something to myself because I know that one guy can't get to me in time. Or there's 10 guys there, shit, and I'm low on health. Best thing to do is probably to run and find a place I can hide so I can heal myself. Like it gets you thinking, but like Resident Evil in that way, it gets you thinking in like how you have to manage your items carefully because
Mm.
you know one misstep and that's it, game over.
Yeah, and it's actually a really good game to compare it to because you want to search like when you play the Resis, you want to search every room and you want to
Yeah,
gather as much resources as you can, and that's the same. Like you do want to find everything so you can make some shanks and everything. You know, like
shanks, yeah,
shanks. So
shank,
skivs, whatever it was called.
shank blood,
Chivs, skivs. I don't know what skiv is. Chiv.
shiv,
Fuck it. I've gone through like every kind of term for a knife. Fucking
the
shank.
a
Yeah.
skiv.
A
Never heard of a
skiv.
skiv.
Neither, but there you go. Skips. Yeah, so you do want to actually search and find stuff, and then when you do get the stuff, you're like, right, I just need some alcohol, and then you find it, and you're like, oh, now I can finally make whatever, and you do find yourself wanting to craft because
Yeah,
sometimes I'll play a game and I can craft things, but sometimes there's just such an array. I'm a bit like, well, I don't even want to bother. I'd rather just get some
yes.
ammo, you know.
I was
So
literally about to say this. I think crafting systems in some games can be so crap or like
overwhelming.
yeah, or like useless. Like even when you think back to like one of our favorite games like Dragon Age and stuff, you can craft an awful lot, but you never need to. It's not necessary. But in
Mm,
that game it's quite necessary. And I feel like it makes the crafting not a big deal. I often find one of my pet peeves is like upgradable weapons. Like sometimes I really love the idea of upgrading a weapon, but then on the other hand, I just find it a bit of a time waster
mm,
going around collecting little bits to go and upgrade your shotgun so it can fire a third bullet rather than a second bullet. Like it'll sometimes it's a bit annoying because that isn't realistic, really. Like there's
mm,
sometimes you can say that if it was real, you might want to like tie blades to your gun in case of this and maybe try and adapt it for survival. But on the other hand, sometimes they're a bit outlandish and you're like, that wouldn't happen. Like, I can't fucking put another barrel on my shotgun or I can't fucking build a scope out of nothing. Like, how am I going to build a scope out of twigs and metal? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's a bit crap, but I do quite like the crafting system in this one.
and the weapon design, like you've just made me
Hmm.
think of that with crafting like silencers and stuff. Like when you look at the weapons that they've made in those games, they're all out of like household items. Like they've
Yeah.
really put some thought into what kind of weapon would you make? Well, you'd probably get a baseball bat, and then you would probably screw some nails into it and create like
Yeah.
more of a devastating one, and you'd probably sharpen any wooden thing to get a spear. Like it
Hmm.
just it definitely kind of pushes the boundaries on like survival, which is just
This,
brilliant for a game that it's meant to be survival, but it's more meant to be sort of like action and story, you know. But it
yeah.
handles itself well with that.
It is very realistic. I think this game is full of realism. Like it is really going for realness. Like it all feels like that could actually happen. I do feel in a way this game is kind of a spiritual successor to Resident Evil in some ways because I mean it is basically the Resident Evil plot line, isn't it? A pandemic takes over the world where you're kind of fighting for your survival. That is kind of the same thing,
The
but they
only thing
take it
it's
in such.
missing, yeah,
Go
is
on.
having a. The only thing it's missing is like a corporation. Like it's
Yeah, that's behind
actually,
it all.
yeah,
Mm,
except they've used like a real fungus that actually does create zombies out of insects, not
yeah,
zombies but infects them. I like that it doesn't use zombies.
yeah,
It's kind of like it's a classy way, isn't it? It's like
classy.
they've got a bit classy. Like you ain't got the zombies, you've got the infected who actually
Yeah,
can get infected, not humans, but like it's possible, you know. So
yeah, it
but you're
takes it up a
right,
notch
yeah,
because zombies are a popular trope, so it'd be very easy to do that. But it and also if it did that, people would just call it a Resi clone. Like it takes it
yeah.
somewhere interesting, and the whole story of like there possibly being a cure, like it's done in a really interesting way. Like I do think that it is a spiritual successor to Resident Evil, but it's done in such an unusual, unique way that it doesn't feel like oh I'm just playing Resi. Like do you know what I mean? It is a really really well done game.
Mm.
Um, one thing I think about the controls I've just remembered is that I really did like the weight of them. Like when you were changing weapon and stuff, for the speed that you had to do that, and like the speeds of reloading, they did feel very heavy. It did feel very realistic. Like, oh my god, I need to reload this weapon, but it's gonna take me fucking 4 seconds to get a bullet in. Like, it was all very realistic. And like when Joel was really badly injured with that nail that went through his um side of his stomach, whatever, I'm no biologist, whatever went through the side of his body, like he felt really heavy and he couldn't move properly, and like everything felt very hard, and it was like, oh fuck, I'm like actually dying here. Like, I really
Yeah.
didn't like appreciate all of that. I thought that was really, really good. One thing I did find annoying, which I can't quite remember if it was which button it was, but I found running to be a problem.
It's the same controls as Uncharted, so you have to press like L1, I think it was, to run,
I
and
didn't
it's
like that.
and it's and then your shooting button is different. Like, it's all, yeah, it's slightly like tweaked because it's the
A
same
bit
controls as
cack-handed.
Uncharted. Yeah, it's not what you'd expect, because you'd expect to press like L1, L3 to run, but instead
Yeah.
that's like listen or something, or crouch. So it,
Hmm.
or is it L? See, it's confusing.
See,
It's not It's not typical.
it's not typical controls. Like, it's not typical, and I think that does help separate it from games like Resi even more so. But
Mm.
that did find that a bit annoying, because even in like, I don't know, even in games that are very similar, they still have a similar control scheme because it works. Like, it's like that for a reason. Like, whenever you played, like, on the PS2, you play like Grand Theft Auto. If you went and played like Driver, or even Crazy Taxi to an element, if you played some of those similar games, it was always triangle to get in your car, and it was always X to go. Like, some of those things are always a trope in many, many games. So yeah, it was a bit weird to have the control. I found it very, very weird. And there was a few times where I died because I just couldn't get my hands in the right position. It took a few times to like get used to it. But
Yeah.
no, I really enjoyed this game. I enjoyed the gameplay. I enjoyed the storyline. I enjoyed everything really, apart from the glitches. Fucking glitches, man.
Such a shame you had the glitches, because
Hmm.
otherwise I think it would have been like, I don't think there's too many faults with the game, to be fair. It makes sense why it's so loved, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate that you've had that. But hopefully when you play the second one, you shouldn't have any issues, because I didn't. It was ran really, really well.
I bloody hope so. But we played the same part one though on PS4, and it's still fucked up for me. But
Oh,
hey ho, let's be positive. Hopefully that won't happen this time.
positivity.
Positivity.
Yeah.
Let's have a sip of some positivity. Um, thanks, I'm here all week. Um, right, okay. So to sum it up, brilliant game, brilliant story, brilliant gameplay, minus the running button, and yeah, I was here for all of it. There's probably so much more we could say, but we've
We'd
just
be
gone on
here all
forever.
day.
We'd be here all
Yeah.
day.
That's
There's
the
so many
thing.
things we enjoyed about this thing. Oh, one quick side note.
Mm,
Did you play the DLC that came with the game afterwards? I can't even remember what it's called. Left Alone or something?
yes.
Thoughts?
I really enjoyed it, but I felt like it was kind of strange how it was set in the middle of the game and then you had flashbacks. But towards the end of it, I guess I kind of understood it. But it was a bit of a strange like setting. But I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I felt like it gave a bit more of a background to Ellie. I wish there was another one. I would have liked another DLC, or just something to kind of, I yeah. I mean, I'm gonna end up talking about part two in a minute and about DLCs, but
Okay.
I feel like these games do really well with DLC because it fills in gaps, It would have been nice to see the direct effect of like Joel before he was in that compound with Tess,
Yeah.
things like that. And it would have been really good. But it's nice that they kind of showed Ellie before, and her situation, and it sort of opened doors. Again, it showed a bit more about her like personal life, her personal feelings, her
Yeah.
personality with her best friend who she ends up kissing. You kind of get some like ideas about it, and you're like, see, I thought so.
Yeah, I think it like spells it out for you, because I think it was quite, I mean, quite obvious in the game that she was obviously leaning towards.
Well, she's not your typical girl.
Yeah, she gives the impression of not your I think at first she gives you an impression of being not your typical girl, and then she gives the impression of being a bit of a tomboy. And then as the game goes on, you probably start to suspect, you're like, I think she's probably a lesbian. And then then the DLC like confirms it, and you're like, okay, cool.
Which
But
I
that's also
bloody love. I think
what I
that's
was
why I
gonna
related
say.
to it. Yeah.
That's why you related. You're like, that's me.
That's me.
Um, that's me. I think that's quite cool, because you never really get to play in that sense. One, a female main character. There's not really many games out there that celebrate female characters, and if they do, they're usually long-standing series like Tomb Raider, or I'm trying to think, even Jill or Claire in Resident Evil. They
I
don't
mean,
appear in every game.
there's Aloy from Horizon, who's like a pretty strong character, but
Hmm.
she's new, but they share very much like the same sort of thing where she comes from kind of a bit of a rough sort of situation and grows,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, I get what you mean. But apart from her, like it is very thin on the ground, especially
Hmm.
someone of that kind of, you know, a young gay kid who's like discovering herself as much as discovering the world. Like it's just brilliant. Like
Yeah, it's quite
yeah,
cool, especially when you take notice of like, I mean, there's a great video that I can direct you away that she'll from the game theorists who talk about like how most of the time, whenever you see anyone in a game that's gay, usually it's a man, and then if it is a woman or if it is a man or whatever, usually they're crazy or fucked up or the villain or there's something wrong with them. So they end up being the negative character regardless, who just happens to have a weird kink or is weirdly insane. Like you
yes,
never played Code Veronica, but Alfred Ashford is like ends up being a little bit touched in the head. I say a little bit. He's fucked up, and like it comes out later that he obviously has some kind of other sexual proclivities, and it's always like they're always insane or weird. So it's nice to see a character who's actually like normal in the head, like is not a psycho or not a mass murderer or not
yeah.
an evil twisted villain. It's just someone who's an average person who's
Or they
just
try and take the piss. It's like
yeah, or it's a joke.
they
Yeah.
to get round it, like they'll have like a gay bloke who's like really girly or something, and you're like, "Well,
Hmm.
some bloody blokes." Do you know what I mean? It's like that's not the case. Like gay people are normal as fuck people, you know,
Hmm.
in all shapes and sizes. So it's
Except you.
nice that except me. No, but it's nice that they
I
do
mean, it's
that.
like Trevor from GTA. Again, it's hinted that he's enjoys the company of men, and he's a fucking nut job, mass murdering nut job.
I
So
know
like,
it's like they slide it in and then they're like, oh yeah, but he does this as well. Oh,
yeah.
this is this, and you're like, why can't you just have a gay person, man? Like we exist, like it's fine. Which is what I like about these games. Like they, especially number two, like they really bring it out. And I think that's another reason people like kicked off because they thought there was a lot of agenda in the game, and it was like, no, this is just
Oh,
real life.
okay.
Like this is just actual people like that exist in the world that have been
Yeah.
brought to a wider audience, and like you just don't accept it because you don't understand it.
I think a lot of gamers are stifled in that way because we're not really exposed to that kind of media. Like it's not it's always seen as like that's not something that people want to play as. And then when it finally is put out in quite a mature, well done way, I thought, it's
Mm,
like, ugh, here you
yeah,
go again. And it's like, oh, okay.
yeah, it's weird that because it's like, okay, so like name another game where you've played like your main character has been a gay woman or a black woman or a black man or like just anyone, you know, like it's
Hmm.
always there's always a very stereotypical set of characters, and
Yeah.
these sort of games like push the boundaries, and I think that's the stage that we're at with games. I think it's such a platform now that films have done it, TV does it, like you need to open the doors more. So
Hmm.
it's really nice that they did that and that they included that in um Ellie's little story. I guess you can say they were maybe kind of getting the player to assume certain things again and then answered it in
Hmm.
the DLC. So, yeah.
Which again is one thing that does annoy me a little bit. There's always the answer in a DLC, like not even just the sexuality to anything. I'm a
Yeah.
bit against that whole tying the knots together in the DLC. Like if it's going to be part of the main story and integral to the character, it should be in the main game.
Yeah.
DLC should be something extra, like a what if story or a side story, not the true ending or the true understanding. Or like, do you know what I mean? That kind of
Sometimes,
stuff does
yeah,
piss me off.
they are really crafty with stuff like that in some games where they just kind of save all the all the not all the good stuff, but a lot of the like a lot of questions are answered in DLC.
Yeah.
Um, but you know,
But hey ho, right. But we've well over start again. We've gone well over
Lova.
our time. We've gone well over our time. Um so yeah, Last of Us, 10 out of 10 would recommend. uh
Definitely.
really liked it. So please stay tuned for our next episode on The Last of Us, which will be Last of Us Part 2.
I'm
I'll
so
try and play it
excited.
this week.
I'm so excited to talk about it.
I will get through it, I promise you. I'll try and get through it. I'll make sure that I've done it soon.
Watch like the next episode, be like, it's good, and you're like, it's shit, we didn't need it, and I'm
Yeah, I'm
like,
like, why the fuck did you make me
"Ugh."
play this piece of shit? Jesus Christ.
I'm like, right, podcast over, okay, no
Let's
more.
think of the drama. Can't wait.
No,
Right. So yeah, thanks for listening. Just to remind you all, we do have social media as well. So we do have Twitter at TG Breakdown, and we do have an Instagram at TG Breakdown Podcast, which you can share your thoughts and opinions with us if you think we're talking shit, or you agree with us, or just want to say hi. Or I know, right? You can check out some of the footage of these fucking glitches that I experienced because you think I'm exaggerating. No, fell through the floor multiple times. I punched an infected through a wall, and I followed him through the wall. We went into a big white space, and then we all died. I died on a table. I'm very angry about it because it took up at least 2 hours of my time, and I almost threw the fucking game
Trying to get
away.
out the table. Get out the table.
Get out of the table. I've got like still on my phone. There's like videos that I was sending you, going, "What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Why is this happening again?" Anyway, so if you want to see any of that footage, we will post that on our social media. So please do keep an eye on it. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this one. And anything you want to say?
No. You
Good.
covered it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.